Hello folks, welcome to another video in the Microsoft Sim. This will be a Modders Monday episode. I haven't done one of those for a while. Modders Monday is where I look at typically aircraft mods, and most of them feature here in this simulator. Today is no exception, folks. Geez, old mate needs to have cut the grass a bit. Have a look at that. The wheels are completely buried in the grass. Folks, the aircraft on your screen you may recognise. It is the Savage Cub, a default stock aircraft that comes with the sim. Well, it's recently received a mod treatment, and I thought I'd feature that because I'm quite impressed with what our friend the modder has done, and I'll take you through that. He's documented it really well, and then we'll go for a bit of a fly. Love this livery. This is an Alaska Bear livery, and I'll link to that in the description as well as the aircraft mod, as well as this location. Oh, hello, we've got an aircraft over here which seems to have itself buried in the side of the strip. This is a place called Paradise, folks. Looks a lot like Alaska, doesn't it? Alaska in the summertime, perhaps. It's actually in New Zealand. Not that far from Queenstown, sort of down the road, around the corner a bit. Yeah, Paradise it's called. So I'll link to that in the description. We head in that direction, we'll end up in Queenstown eventually. We're not going to go to Queenstown, folks. We're just going to go for a quick fly in this aircraft. But first, let me take you through what the mod actually does. So here we are. The modder, MG Enterprises, is what he refers to himself as. He's done some work over in the X-Plane world, this guy. And I'm trying to remember exactly which aircraft. I think there was a few that he provided some mods to. And now he's turned his attention towards the Microsoft Sim, and the Microsoft Simming community thanks you, mate. This is the description and changelog that he's put together, and I'm impressed with this fact alone. Just the documentation, just the explanation of what it does. I'm not going to read every line. I'm not going to make you do that. And I hope that the text actually does come through on the video. I've blown it up sort of, 1200% so that my own eyes can read it. But let's focus on some of the key aspects. So he's made changes to the flight model parameters, the aircraft weight and balance. He's done a fair bit of work, and he says it's detailed in the included changelog, which is what you're reading right now. He talks a little bit about the aircraft, and I'd absolutely agree with his assessment. It's a lot of fun, the Savage Cub, one of my favourites, one of the simplest aircraft for the sim, but just an absolute joy, pure flying joy. I've had the distinct pleasure of actually flying a Savage Cub in that thing we called real life, and it's great to see it in the sim. Brings back some memories. So he's documented, this is version 1.2, I think. So in version 1, each release he's documented what he's done. So replaced the pilot stuff, added a baggage station to the weight and balance. Since the aircraft POH, it does recommend placing some ballast weight in the baggage area when flying solo. I remember that. Has placed a full PDF copy of the flight manual. That's always handy. It's a pretty simple flight manual. It's a simple aircraft. And thank you for doing that, mate. Engine parameters have been modified to more closely match the actual specs for the Rotax 912. The engine idle RPM has been increased to more closely match the specs. Scalers have been adjusted. Flight model geometry has been adjusted. The horizontal stabilizer incidence. Default elevator trim has been set to neutral. Rudder effectiveness, elevator effectiveness. A whole bunch of stuff, folks. That was in version 1. And then he came out with version 1.1 and did some further tweaking of it. And that was good. And then he's just in the last week or so, I think, come out with version 1.2 and made a whole bunch of additional changes. So I'll link to it in the description if you're interested in going through this in any detail. Download it, give it a go. I love it. I love the Savage Cub, the default one. For all of it, it had its little quirks compared to the real thing, but you kind of learn to accept those things. But it's fantastic that a guy like this has has directed his attention towards making a default aircraft even better. So, thank you to you, Mr. MG Enterprises, and let's go for a fly here in Paradise, New Zealand. Alright, so Jude's on board. You don't see her when you're inside the aircraft, but that's okay. That's okay with a K, mate. Time for another coffee. We'll take any sighting of Jude that we can get, won't we, folks? Yeah, definitely needs a old mate to pull out the mower and give it a bit of a cut. Yes. And he probably needs to do something about that aircraft. But I've already called attention to that, so now I'm just duplicating or wasting bloody people's time, including my own. Savage Cub, no visual changes that I'm aware of. You get it as it was intended by the developers. Simple aircraft. It very closely resembles the real thing, as I recall, and nice simple aeroplane. You cannot go wrong here in the Savage. So what we'll do is we'll set some takeoff flat, which is there. You can't see Jude, can you? But just imagine her cold gaze upon thyself there. What else do we need to worry about? Not too bloody much. Trim seems to be set to a neutral position. I'll take his word for it. Yeah, the throttle's there. Trim stuff's there. There's not much to it, eh? Really isn't. Some fuel gauges. Yeah, there really isn't much to it. So let's go flying. Let's do this thing. Give it some juicy. I don't know what the wind's doing. Kind of just picked a runway that the sim thought we needed to be taking off from. A little bit of right boot here, and we'll get airborne pretty quickly. She doesn't muck around the Cub. We'll get up here momentarily. There we go, nicely away. Climb out at about 60 knots. Now, another mod that I've added to this aeroplane, you might see the airspeed indicator. The default one comes with an airspeed indicator measured in kilometres per hour. You're seeing one on your screen that is measured in knots. That is a mod that's been around for quite a while. Come back on the juice. And I'll link to that in the description as well. I just prefer to see airspeed indicators in knots. Although you do adapt, you do get used to it, don't you? So we'll just continue to climb out here. We normally climbed out at about 60, something like that. We're climbing pretty well. Climbing about 700 feet a minute here at 70 knots. That's not too bad. 2 on board, half tanks of gas. That seems pretty realistic to me. Beautiful day here in New Zealand. We might just level out. It's not going to be a long fight. Not going to be a fight at all. It's not going to be a long flight, is what I intended to say. So, speaking of small aeroplanes, small tail draggers, I'm guessing that most people involved or interested in aviation have discovered that video from that bloke. I'm trying to remember his name. Is it Trevor? Trevor someone? The guy who basically jumps out of a Taylorcraft, old Taylorcraft aircraft over there in California. Jumps out and parachutes to safety. Films the whole thing. And by the time that this video hits the YouTube, my video here, there will be dozens, if not hundreds, if not thousands of videos analysing that little event. And a fascinating thing to watch the original video and then to watch the analysis as well. There's some very good analysis that's been done by various people with YouTube channels. I won't discuss individual channels or link to them or anything like that. They're easy enough to find, folks. But people wondering whether it was a stunt, whether it was real, I think it's it's pretty obvious that it was a stunt, and quite a disgraceful one at that. There are a lot of people in the world, unfortunately, who feel the need to go to more and more extremes in order to get attention. They're lacking something in their life, and look, at the very least, it was just a shame for that beautiful old aeroplane to end up the way it did. And but yeah, a fascinating week or so in the world of aviation, with all of the analysis and stuff that people have done, and trying to get inside the mind of the so-called pilot that did that. If that bloke is ever let inside an aeroplane again, ever, it will be too soon. Absolutely disgraceful. But anyway, enough about that. We're here, we're doing some flying. This, the snow representation here on the terrain, it's not realistic. It's early January when I film this in New Zealand. Yeah, there's not snow on the ground. Not here. We'll make our way back. It just flies beautifully. Speaking of the aircraft, which is the subject of the video, it flies beautifully. I thought it always did fly pretty well anyway, but it's now flying more accurate. It tended to go a little bit quicker, as I recall, when I flew it early on. You know, I'm doing 70 knots here at just over 4,000 on the RPM. The field's just down here, folks. That's why I'm sort of, I don't want to go too far. We'll land as we we might land on a different runway, cross strip, little one. Yeah, 4,200 on the old tacho, and we're doing about 75 odd knots. That's roughly in line with what I recall. Flies pretty well. We might do some slow flight, hey, while we can. So what we'll do is we'll take the gas right off. She'll slow down. Take both stages of flap, slow right down here, and you can get it pretty slow. You can see the bottom of the white arc there. If I hold it, it will stall pretty soon, I would imagine. She'll stall. A little bit of a knob bob. Full power there, will come out, flaps up, climb away. Yeah, I remember she did. You know, she would stall a little bit. It's a little bit more grunt than that. That was kind of just like a bob of the nose, wasn't it? Not much to it. Easy recovery. Perhaps a little too easy. Beautiful rivers here in New Zealand. So this is the Orbex New Zealand mesh as well. Probably should link to that in the description. There's going to be a few links here. I'll have to remember that. There's our field coming around 11 o'clock and soon to be 12 o'clock. We're going to cut the gas. The glider in. Yeah, we'll land on that short cross strip. Like a few hundred metres. It's long enough for the Savage. Going to a bit of a slip here. We are definitely high. Down under 60 we can go with some flap. The sort of pitch moment when you drop flap has sort of been dampened a bit. I don't remember a significant pitch moment in the real thing, so it's probably made it more realistic. We're going to come in with a crosswind here and get this thing slowed right up. This will be interesting. Looks like some sheep here. Yeah, that's realistic. Here we go. So about 45 knots. Nice and easy. We'll land slow and we'll pull up pretty quick. A little bit of a crosswind here. Come right off the juice now. Kick it straight a little bit with rudder. There we go. We'll pull up real fast. Here we go. Look, not a perfect landing, but perfectly acceptable for an old fellow who hasn't flown it for a while. That's a Savage Cub mod. I was going to say Savage Carbon. That's a separate aircraft. Also a mod. You find that on a couple of videos on the channel. But Savage Cub mod. Link to it in the description. Thanks to the developer for making it available. Thank you to all of you for your company in another video, and we'll see you next time, folks.